Okay, let's move on now to 1.1, which is proportional reasoning. Now, this is actual Math 10-3 material. We've moved on. We're starting the new stuff. I have to assume now that either you've done all of the fraction, decimal, percent review, or you haven't, but you know what you're doing. Okay, that's the assumption that I have to go with now. So again, if those previous skills are not in place, you're going to want to take the time to go back and do them. Now, maybe your teacher made it mandatory, maybe they didn't, but the point is the material is there and you need to master it. You've got to be able to work with those units. And I know that in junior high it's tough, but in that 31 pages or whatever the heck I had there, it's a pretty good review of everything you need to know. Nonetheless, I'm going to move on. We're going to look here really briefly just at some terminology, then we're going to get moving here. These are things that you've probably come across before. Nothing here is too difficult. Again, you could Google search any of these terms. You could look up images. We're going to look here at 4 different terms: ratio, rates, unit rates, and proportions. A ratio. What's a ratio? That's like saying you're in a classroom and let's say you want to compare the number of boys to girls. Well, you would put 5 boys, semicolon, 15 girls. That's a ratio, like 3 to 4, 5 to 15. So usually that semicolon you read as the word 2. So you'd be 5 boys to 15 girls. If you come down now, a rate. A rate is simply when you say you're comparing 2 units. So for example, let's say you go to the store and it was 69 cents for 12 ounces of soup. Okay, that's a rate. It's telling you how much you pay for how much you get, essentially. That's a rate. Now, what's a unit rate then? A unit rate is something we're really going to focus on in this unit of study. A unit rate is when you want to know, essentially, let's say, for example, what is the cost for one item. So for example, you see it's $1.25 for 1 can. So I know that 1 can is $1.25. You see, this is not a unit rate because it's 69 cents for 12 ounces of soup. If I wanted to make that a unit rate, I would have to figure out the price for 1 ounce of soup. The next thing we're going to look at here is proportions. Now this is a big deal in this course. The ability to equate 2 fractions and to be able to figure out some math here. Now, there's multiple ways of doing this. A proportion essentially is where you have 2 fractions that are the same but just they have different quantities put in there. And I'll show you the operations and why this is so powerful here in a little bit. I'll just show you a ratio example. Charles works as a cook in a restaurant. His chicken soup requires 12 cups of broth, 5 cups diced vegetables, 3 cups rice, 3 cups chopped chicken. If he wants to make a smaller batch, he would need to know the ratios. What is the ratio of vegetables to chicken? Okay, so vegetables to chicken. So that would be, you could write it like this, 5 to 3. You also could write it in fraction form of 5 over 3 if you wanted to. Next one is, what is the ratio of broth to chicken? So that should be 12 to 3. 12 to 3. Okay. Oh, that's broth to vegetables. I'm sorry, I'm not reading that properly. Broth to vegetables, that'd be 12 to 5, which of course you could write as 12 over 5. What is the ratio of chicken to rice? Well, chicken to rice, so you have 3 to 3. If you put that in fraction form, that is going to be 3 over 3. Now remember, you always want to reduce. You always want to. We practice this, and that's why there was those that specific practice evidence page on simply just reducing fractions. See, if you have 3 over 3, what can they both be divided by? They can both be divided by 3. So this becomes 1 to 1. It is key that you reduce your fractions. You must reduce your fractions, okay? That's very important. Whenever you can, reduce your fractions. Okay, let's go on to another example. Tom and Susan make $180 in a garage sale. Because Tom has fewer items to sell than Susan, the money is divided between them in a ratio of 1 to 2. Well, okay, it looks like here that they're not getting the exact same amount of money. yeah, they both work the garage sale. They sold things, but not everything's going to be shared equally here, okay? So let's try to figure out how much they get. Now this one, it's maybe a little bit tricky, but you have to kind of think of how this works. You see, when I see that ratio of 1 to 2, it kind of means out of a total. So what it means is I want you to pretend, I know there's $180, but let's just pretend there was $3 sitting on the table. And Tom and Susan are both going to be like, well, how much of this do I get? Now, if you look at the ratio was 1 to 2, okay? So Tom is 1 and Susan was here. I guess what I'm trying to say to you is out of the $3, how much would they both get? Well, Tom would get $1. 1 out of $3. Whereas Susan would get 2 out of $3. So what you do in this case is you have to kind of mess with it just a little bit. If you want to figure out how much money they would get, here's how you would do it. Now you see Tom, he gets 1 out of every $3. So that's 1 out of 3, which is a fraction or a decimal, and you would multiply that by 180. You can see here now why I have to assume that you can change that 1 over 3 into a decimal and go. That means he gets $60. If you look at Susan, she gets 2 out of every $3. So that would be, Susan would be 2/3, or 0.6666 on forever, times 180, and that would give a total of $120. Okay, so I'm just showing you there, even though the ratio is 1 to 2, I get that, but we have to think of what is it out of. You see, they're sharing the money but not equally. So out of, let's say there's $3 sitting on the table, Tom gets 1 out of the $3 and Susan gets 2 out of the $3. And we use that information to set up our calculation. Here's a rate example. We'll go on. It says, recall a rate is just a ratio with different units. 80 kilometers per hour, $15, 12 cans. A photocopier can print 200 pages in 1 minute. Write a rate of papers that will be printed in seconds. Okay, well, no big deal. So you see, we know it's 200 pages in 1 minute. Well, how many seconds do we have in 1 minute? Quite simply, that's going to be 200 pages in 60 seconds. There you go. That's your answer. Already done. Okay. Now, if we take this a step further, we're going to get to a unit rate example. The unit rate can often be used to allow you to compare values out of 1. We talked about this. So now it says, well, what is the unit rate for number of pages a copier will print in 1 second? Now you see, what we have is 200 pages in 60 seconds. But for a unit rate, we want to know how many are going to be printed in 1 second. Well, we're going to let you practice this math, but you have to look at this and you have to think, how do you go from, so I'm just going to try to change my pen color here, sorry. How do you go from 60 to 1? Now, here's how I think of it. In general, if you get bigger, you multiply. If you get smaller, you divide. Now, that's in generalities, but I'm just saying that for this course. So if we go from 60 to 1, we're going smaller, so we're going to divide. 60 divided by what gives you 1? Well, we'll divide by 60. If you do it on the bottom, you better do that on the top too, for the ratios are equal to each other. And 200 divided by 60 is, it's 3.3 pages. So your unit rate would be 3.3 pages in 1 second. That means, look at the photocopier, there's always, in every second, there's 3.3 pages coming out. I know it seems a little bit weird, but that's where it stands. Now, I'm going to let you guys have some practice with this. I'm just going to erase this here for you can see this a little bit better. I'm going to have you check out, you're going to look at the evidence page. This will be there, this little work page, page 16, 4, 5, 9, 13. I'm not saying it's going to be the only thing, but this would be the time where you might want to review what we've just done, or simply move on to the onto the evidence section and practice some of these questions.